Hello, everyone. My name is Miriam Lazarte. I'm co-founder and CEO for LatAm Startups. And today we have another webinar about FinTech because FinTech is in the spotlight this month. So we have done, a series of webinars this month about FinTech. First, we were talking about FinTech in Latin America. Second, we had another webinar about FinTech about Canada. And today we have very special guests and experts about FinTech in between Canada and Latin America. So I would like to thank all our guests today for joining us in this webinar and to thank all your attendees for coming today and be part of the webinar. So please don't hesitate to send us questions when we finish this webinar with the questions that we have. You can send questions to contact@latamstartups.biz or through the hashtag LatAmStartups. So you guys have actually, have access to any of the questions that you like to ask to our guest. And we'd like to thank as well our sponsor this month for FinTech in the Spotlight. So that's ProGivers. This is a crowdfunding platform in Mexico that just, starting up this year. They have a great platform right now for raise money for startups and as well for social initiatives. So take a look to progivers.com. They are doing a great job to help you to get money for your projects there. So I'd like to introduce you our guest today. So first we are going to go with Eduardo in Brazil. Eduardo Sette, he is an investor and a mentor. See, he's part of a company that is called Exim. And I would like Eduardo to introduce himself.
Hello, everybody. As Miriam said, my name is Eduardo. I've been working with venture capital for about 10 years. Spent the first 7 developing the ecosystem in Brazil with the Brazilian Innovation Agency. And for the past 3 years, I decided to leave and start my own firm to do venture capital investing and mentor some startups.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Eduardo. Then we have Melloney Campbell. Melloney is CEO of the Startup Build, a community of Startup Canada. Melloney does a great job here for many other projects and initiatives. So I'm going to let Melloney to introduce herself.
Great. Thanks, Miriam. Hopefully everyone can hear me. As Miriam said, I'm CEO of Startup Heal, which is a Startup Canada community. It's a grassroots-oriented community. We have a very large base of startups, small businesses, and we help them, we mentor them, we connect them to resources, and we help them to really launch their business and to scale their business. Many are seeking to go global this year, which is fantastic. We were in Mexico last year with Medium as part of the LatAm conference, and it went amazingly well. We made some great connections for Canadians that want to do business in Mexico and Mexicans that want to do business here in Canada. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Melloney. And now we have Rebeca Azaola. She's replacing Alejandro because Alejandro had like a last minute thing that he has to take care of. So Rebeca is actually part of Afluenta, and she is a community manager in Mexico. Rebeca, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thank you, Miriam. Yes, I am Rebeca Azaola. I am the country manager of Mexico. We launched Mexico last year, and I am responsible of all the operations in Mexico. I have been working in the public sector. I have worked in the federal bank in Mexico and the commission that regulate banks. And then I decided to go to the private sector. This is my 3rd startup, and this is my, I have been always in the finance industry, but this is my first FinTech company, and we have really great opportunity in Mexico as a peer-to-peer company working now.
And this is really great because, you know, Brazil, Mexico, and Canada are really strong ecosystems regarding FinTech. As we mentioned it before in our other webinars, we are actually, have very strong ecosystems in Brazil. Brazil is kind of the first one in Latin America, and then is Mexico. And then we have Canada as the third one. I mean, in North America, it's the first one in after New York. So we are very glad that we actually can have this webinar with all you guys. So far, guys, we have some questions right now. So we are going to start with the first question. First question is, how do you define today a fintech company? And I would like to start with Eduardo in Brazil. Could you please tell us that?
Okay, Miriam. To me, fintech is any tech company that has one of its main driving that already exists or that is about to be created of the new product service or that these startups. Also, I think that there's a time that fintech split in different sectors following the industry and fintechs and insurtechs. That's pretty much how I define a fintech company.
Okay, perfect. So Rebecca, can you tell us from your point of view in Mexico, how do you define a fintech company in Mexico?
Sure. I think, like at least in Mexico, probably as well as the rest of the world, there are companies that have a huge driving of technology with alternative ideas. What we are looking is really providing good services and in an efficient way to the public, to people. And that's something that probably traditional financial institutions have lacked or forget through all these years. So in my point of view, fintech company in Mexico are all those companies that combine finance and technology in order to get close to people and provide with good services to them.
Okay, perfect. So Melloney, from that perspective, how is defining a fintech company here in Canada?
Well, I'd say most fintech companies in Canada, they're part of a larger ecosystem of companies that use innovation, they use technology. It could be a product, it could be a service that they're offering, but many, they're competing in the traditional financial market space right now to fill gaps that, maybe our large banks are not addressing. It could be something that really helps the general audience, the general public to get to market sooner. So they're filling a gap, really.
And I don't know if actually Rebecca heard me about that, but I wanted you to go first and let us know why, what is the main reason why the market should support fintech startups? Do you have a new startup in fintech? So why it should be that?
I think because the traditional, at least in Mexico, the traditional finance sector, it has been really slow. There's a huge lack of transparency, and I don't think the consumer service it's in good shape at all. So fintech companies, what they provide is they are really agility. They are fast. Because first their costs according to or compared with the traditional banking are much more lower, so that makes them or make us much faster and efficient and our key is to be really close to people, provide them with services that they are really needed, and in Latin America there's a huge gap between what products are in the market and what people it's really getting. So why is the main reasons the companies should support fintech? Because we are fast, because we are close to people, because really talented people is attracted to this kind of market. They want to be part of this growing industry. And as the first key or goal is we really want to be related to our customers. We want to have this empathy and be aware of what they need and try to solve the problems. And I think according to what is providing in the traditional industry, at least in Mexico. That's a really competitive advantage.
Perfect. Thank you, Rebecca. Melloney or Eduardo, would you like to complement this regarding why the market should support fintech companies right now?
Melloney, you want to go ahead?
No, you can speak
okay.
now.
No, I think pretty much in the same lines was being said that I think fintechs have the ability to offer more people and access to tools and services for wealth creation. And I think that we, the 1% or the 5%, need to realize that actually most people in the world don't have the same access that we have to. Fintechs can be of percentile mobility and wealth distribution. A huge market, and I think that's just good for everyone, for society as a whole, and for companies also.
Yeah, definitely, Eduardo. And Rebecca, I just want to add to that, as it really creates an opportunity to gain new products in the marketplace, and that's what we were mentioning. These are things that fill the gap. They fill the need that maybe large institutions are not doing right now. So they make things easier for like the payment systems, the digital wallets. When I was in Mexico, I was completely blown away. We were at the building, I won't mention the name of the bank, but they're surpassing that with the innovation right now in fintech, because they've adopted the principle of standing behind the fintech market, not just to take away from the regular business, but to supplement to that regular business, because they've realized that they're missing out on the market. So by supporting that, they've actually gone ahead and they've maybe jumped leaps than other banks have done by doing into that segment. So yeah, definitely to bring that to market.
Perfect. For the next question, I would like you guys to describe how is the fintech sector in your country. So Melloney, in a specific, fintech is super strong here in Toronto. Like in general terms, it's strong in Canada, but it's specific in Toronto. So how do you describe that booming fintech sector right now in the country?
I can describe it in a couple of things. Right now, it's the fintech, the whole innovation is moving very, very fast. But in the same breath, it's also moving slow, because we have compliance that needs to be adhered to. So in terms of, say, an institution wanting to jump on and partner with a fintech company, it's very difficult for them to do that, because they have to go through so many levels of compliance, and because they have to adhere to shareholders, it's a little bit slower in that part. But where a smaller company can create a product, they can get to market quicker. We have some great events that really feature that as well too, which is the Crowd Finance Association. They're bringing that ability by accenting this and promoting this. So you'll see a growth in that. We'll continue to see a growth in that, especially even in digital wallet. We've seen larger companies, they've partnered with smaller companies, and payment systems. There is one that just came out, it's out west right now. It's helping the general market to manage their finances, and they're doing this on a free platform. So it's just the beta stage right now, and it's amazing to see this. So what it really does, it puts the onus on the larger banks and larger financial institutions to get into the game, to step up. And maybe they need to create a spin-off of their companies to help take advantage of the fintech movement that's so strong right now in Canada.
That's awesome, Melloney. Thank you for those insights. Eduardo, in Brazil was considered the one sector, fintech, is the most sector that is producing right now startups in Latin America. So how do you describe the startup sector there regarding fintech?
I think we're experiencing a healthy growth so far. I've seen an estimate that we should have around 200 fintechs in Brazil right now. I think it's still a healthy number, considering mainly considering all the regulatory questions and hurdles the financial sector has. Like Brazil has one of the most advanced banking systems in the world, due both to the long period of hyperinflation and to the fact that we actually managed to solve that problem. So I think that most of the lowest hanging fruits opportunities here will be about knowing how to offer something that already exists, but to a wider audience.
That's perfect. Thank you so much, Eduardo. And Rebecca, did you mention something about the fintech sector and how it's, getting strong in Mexico? Would you like to add something about, how would you describe that sector right now in Mexico?
Sure. I mean, as I think since the Mexican tech wave in 2012, we have been really growing fast in Mexico. We have different companies that they're established now for some time. I think we have the biggest number of startups in Latin America as a country right now, and it's still growing fast. Even more than the government has started working in a regulation for the fintech sector since last year. The regulation is not launched, but we have been working close to the government in order to accomplish this regulation and make the industry much more stronger to operate in Mexico.
Perfect. And Rebecca, specific regarding that part, we know that fintech companies are disrupting the traditional sector, and you mentioned regulations and all that. So how do you think is impacting and disrupting the traditional sector right now? How are the traditional companies reacting to new fintech companies?
I think they are both ways. I think some of them are not happy about it. They know that I think at the beginning, as probably the rest of the world, they consider a very small movement. But now that they are looking at it much more closely and growing so fast, they are or not happy or trying to make some connections with the fintech industry. I think as you all know, Mexico has a lack of credit opportunities, still a lack of good credit opportunities, and in other industries like payments and stuff. So some people think that probably in the future they would take around 20, 29, 30% of the business, of the banking business from the traditional sector. What we are seeing is that some of the banks are really trying to do some synergies with the fintech industries and see how they can use all these new technology that for them could take more time to get into, or probably their regulation as traditional institutions could not make possible to operate as fintech is doing right now. So I think you never know how they are gonna react at the last part. They know that they would lose some market if they don't get into the fintech sector. So it's hard to say, but probably you would look some synergies, interesting synergies between banks and some fintech companies these past years.
Perfect. And we saw actually there when we were doing the LatAm Startups conference in Mexico, actually we had the possibility, the opportunity to visit the BBVA, which is one of the biggest banks that we have in Latin America. And they were mentioning that today the competition is no other banks but fintech companies, and this is the reason why they put together an incubator, and they are trying to identify those startups in the market so they can actually either acquire them or work with them. So I think banks realize that the potential is there in technology. This is the same question as well for Melloney. Melloney, I would like to know, fintech has been working here in Canada for many years, but as well as disrupting a very, very traditional sector we have here in Toronto. We have many big banks. So how did you see that evolution and disruption in market?
In terms of the evolution, there's a lot of new products that's coming out to meet market demands. But in the same breath, evolution is slow for large banks because it comes back down to compliance. I mean, right now you can see some disruption gateways for mortgages, like the online ability to apply. Insurance companies and products are offering right now online. But in reality, big banks still have a big way to go. They still have a large way to go. I know a few of the larger banks. There's some that have partnered with, like a small sector to launch in Silicon Valley, and they're working on that. I think what they should really do is not to take away from anything that's in the U.S., but they need to maybe create some of those solutions here in Canada, because you have a large market here that's very hungry for this technology. They want to use it. And what better way to do that than to test it on home ground? You have your beta testers here. And I think what they need to also do is probably try and streamline some of these governing processes, these compliance processes. There must be a way to address the risks and the privacy and really hit it out of the park, get going on that, because let's face it, fintech's not going to wait for the banks, and your consumers, like the consumers of these large banks, they're not going to wait for the banks to catch up. You have a lot of the small businesses right now that are using alternative lenders. So they're disrupting that financial industry right now, because you have the fintech providers and alternative lenders, and they're getting a nice chunk right now because banks are not, they haven't caught up to them yet. So in terms of that, I think it's, the disruption's there, but the banks just need to catch up.
Perfect. So yeah, we can see that there is still a lot of work to do regarding fintech and regulations and all that. So Eduardo, regarding the financial sector in Brazil, it's really complicated. We have actually you in another webinar last year talking about Brazil and doing business there. It is a complex system that you guys have there in Brazil. How is fintech disrupting this sector, the traditional sector in Brazil?
I think here in Brazil, we have a lot of opportunities, but we have also a lot of problems. I remember, I think a couple of years ago, I talked to Alejandro Sorian from Afluenta, because he wanted to come into Brazil, and I told him, look, I'm 95% sure that what you want to do here in Brazil is illegal, but I'll put you in touch with the former director of the central bank. And he confirmed it. Yeah, there's no there's no peer-to-peer lending in Brazil unless you charge at the most 1% a month. Other than that, if you want to charge more, that's illegal here in Brazil. So I think we have some problems with old regulations. On the other hand, we have some facilities on some things that are already very well established. And the big corporations here in Brazil, so far, they're not catching up, or they're partnering up with the companies that already exist, like Nubank. I have a company called Quinto Andar that offers insurance guarantees for people that want to rent homes. That's getting very big here. It's basically in São Paulo, but they did raise a lot of money right now. And I know XCP Labs has accelerated a company that's very similar that's operating in Buenos Aires. So I don't think the major financial corporations represent a big problem yet, because I think most of them realize that they won't be able to have the same speed as startups, that their persona is not adequate for a wider and younger audience, and that tech innovation is not their forte. And also, I think that there's a quote from Tancredi in the movie The Leopard, that if we want things to stay as they are, things will have to change. I think most of the big financial corporations realize that for things to remain the same, everything must change. And they're just keeping an eye out to that change.
Perfect. Thank you so much for those insights, Eduardo. And as well, because we deal with many international startups that they are actually scaling up other markets, I would like to know about challenges and opportunities for those startups when they are actually entering into those markets. So, for example, Melloney, what would you say is the biggest challenge and the biggest opportunity for Latin American startups or international startups to come here with a fintech company here in Canada?
It's a good question. Sorry, I think some of the largest stumbling blocks are the solid partnerships. As mentioned, we met some amazing, brilliant companies when we were in Mexico, and how do you create that that hub? Pardon the pun medium. I know it's something that you're working on right now, which is amazing and something that's needed. But to be able to connect startups here in Toronto that want to work and partner with startups in Mexico, it's really to create that that open opportunity, because you may have a startup that's in Mexico that has a component that maybe a startup here in Toronto can use, or a startup in Vancouver. They can partner together and create an amazing end product that they can both benefit from, instead of both reinventing the wheel. I think maybe some of it could be, regulations would be one thing, and then just to create a very clear path. It's how can we do that? Maybe something that we need to work together on an alliance type of thing with the Pacific Alliance to create that opportunity, because and that opportunity to really serve the general public there. That's just my thought on that, but
yeah. No, that's great, because Pacific Alliance is pretty much aligned with the things that we are doing here in Canada as well. Brazil, Argentina, and Uruguay, those countries kind of like have similar sectors, and I think we have a biggest possibility to actually bring them here. That's what we are doing with the Latin American Hub. But besides that, now, thank you so much, Mel. Rebecca, I would like to ask you the same question. There are many startups that will see Mexico as a bridge between, North America and Latin America, because the market size as well, and because it's an entry point for Spanish speakers countries. So I would like to know, from your perspective, what is the biggest challenge that they are going to face, international startups going to Mexico, and what is the biggest opportunity you see in the market?
In my point of view, I think the biggest challenge at this point is regulation. What we need is a very robust regulation that accomplish and give confidence to the people in order to invest. But also it has to be flexible and lean enough to allow us to continue innovate and offering products that are valuable for the people and for the business. So I think that's the biggest challenge right now, that the regulation is good enough for all the participants in the sector. And in terms of opportunity, I think I agree with Melloney. I think that we are there's a lot of opportunity to do partnerships and good investments between countries. Although regulation again could that's also something that it should take into account, regulation, in order to probably do investments and partnerships between countries to grow faster and more solid between different kind of companies and industries among payments or peer-to-peer or many other fintech companies.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. And Eduardo, Brazil represents a big market for many people. Of course, many international startups want to go to Brazil because sometimes they don't see the circumstances that you guys are passing through it, because the market is so valuable. So what do you see? What is the biggest challenge and opportunities that international startups will see in Brazil?
I think that the biggest challenges for any fintech, pretty much anywhere, would be a combination of the need for a wide infrastructure access, like credit card, POS, or ATMs, and which basically means you need to have a good network in the country that you're going to, so you can partner up with a big company. Which I don't think is, if you have the network here in Brazil, I don't think the big corporations are against partnering up. Just look at Nubank or they use the Bradesco ATMs. Be cybersecurity, because by definition you're handling people's private information or even their money. For your hurdles, easy to implement. There are some that are harder, like I mentioned, Afluenta's case. And I think the main disruption that is happening not only in Brazil but everywhere is that fintechs, in my opinion, are spearhead we could call Exim 2.0. Fintechs are about bringing to a broader audience access to financial services and products most people, especially in emerging markets, don't have today. Only about providing a line of credit or a bank account to people, but allowing them to have a wider range of investment possibilities, including in themselves, their expected future wealth in the hopes of generating more wealth in the future. So you have to take into account that even though Brazil has 200 million people, the average monthly net take-home pay is actually around 600 to 600, which means that most people in Brazil might even have a bank account, but most of them have no access to the financial sector beyond that. So I think that here in Brazil are pretty much about doing what's already been done in the traditional audience. Example of Alquilando that's been doing that in Buenos Aires and Quinto that's been doing that here in Brazil.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Eduardo. So we have just 2 more questions, and then we're open up questions to the public. If they have, sometimes they don't have questions, but if they have questions, we're going to open up questions in after these 2 questions that we are going to have here. So please remember that send those questions or comments to contact@latamstartups.biz or through the hashtag LatAm Startups. So here are the next question. Here's the next question. How more fintech companies can approach to investors and potential clients in order to grow their business, and what's the best way? This is a big trouble for many companies, especially when you're starting up. You can kind of get your seed funding and everything else. Now that fintech is booming, there are many kind of investors that are trying to put money on that. But sometimes it doesn't work, and sometimes you actually need to think about first in how to get clients. So in your perspective and experience, how do you think a startup in fintech should do that approach? So Rebecca, we are going to start with you.
Sure. In my perspective, I think the best way is through innovative products. I think that you should construct really products that work well for, and next you have to communicate that well to people. You have to make sure that the product and the communication is fast, simple, is easy, and to make sure that the processes that the fintech companies have are clean, are transparent, and easy to access. So in that way, people understand what the product is, how it operates, and why are the advantages of doing so through fintech companies. I think that's pretty much it. Construct well products or good products and communicate them well.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Rebecca. And Eduardo, you are an investor, so I imagine that you hear many times, pitches and all that. So how do you think is the best approach for startups in fintech to actually show up that they are good, for the market, and they need funding, or how they can approach to, corporations and big companies?
I think that so medium, like right now, I think that most countries that have a startup ecosystem are living somewhat of a startup bubble. So my main concern right now wouldn't be how they can access more investors, but how can they access the right investors, right? So the financial sector, I would call like the big boy stable. So there's a lot more risk, a lot more liability, a lot more regulation and scrutiny than in most sectors. Investor that can actually help you safely navigate through all these questions is the most important things. Think as lawyers, we only go so far, and you need someone with actual skin in the game. I would feel a lot more comfortable if the entrepreneurs that we see actually have not only the knowledge but the experience with the financial sector, how much of a risk they're actually taking their fintechs. It's, I would take a page of Peter Thiel's book and say that to not being the first in any market, your offering is at least an order of magnitude better than your competitors. And what I've seen as a commonality on all the major successful fintechs has been customer service. I think we're all pretty much tired of how the traditional financial sector has been dealing with us as consumers. And I think most of them, the fintechs that have worked out, they have a very, very good customer service. And besides that, I think there's a natural movement towards more people who's suffered by fintechs. And the own traditional market is doing it. I'll give you an example. Last year, we had the longest strike from banking professionals here in Brazil. The app downloads for the banking apps just exploded. Guessing probably is going to mean that by this year or next year, there's going to be less and less people actually going to bank branches to pay bills or to do things they usually they're used to go, but now they realize they can do it through an app. And that's going to help, I think, improve the traditional banking system. And
Thank you, Eduardo. So far, we have Melloney as well with some comments about that, because Melloney is part of a really big startup movement here. So you have seen a lot of times this same problem, trying to get funding for startups in that sector. So could you please tell us, how do you think is the best way to actually get investment and clients in this sector?
Okay. Yeah. That is the main thing I hear from everyone is, I need to get funding. I've gone to this investor, I've spoken to this person. And Eduardo, as an investor, there's a few things obviously that, you've mentioned, which are key. Skin in the game, experience in the sector is important. But there's also the fact that a lot of startups, they think they need to get a VC. They need to hop on this. What you also need to understand is that if you approach a VC, they're obviously looking to make sure the valuation is there and how quickly you're going to market. How much are you going to be worth, and how do they exit? They're looking at the exit strategy. If it's something that you're working on that you want to keep and you want to, say, create a service model from it, but you're not looking to sell it right away, then there's other options that you need to look at. I think I go back to the partnership thing because I mentioned it earlier. I think what really needs to happen is when the partnership is formed, whether it's maybe one or two startups, or they need to come together with a very solid product. When a solid product like that is, you're creating an offering that's not already there. You're creating an offering or something better than what your financial institution is giving you or granting to you, or you're paying them, the interest. They give you interest on your money for a service. You really need to have something that's easy to access. I believe, it has to be innovative to refer to what Rebeca was saying. The innovation is key. Thing that isn't already out there. It's something that the market desires. And back again to the investors, when you're promoting your product, if it's something that you're not going to use, well, guess what? No one else is going to use it. So you need to be able to show clear skin in the game. You need to be able to show that it's something that's easy to use, number one, because it's not only millennials that are using technology. You have a lot of boomers. You have a lot of seniors that are using technology right now. And ease of use is important. So if it's on an app, it's mobile. Many of them that live here in Canada, they go south for the winter, not to be birds or anything, but they actually fly south. They stay maybe for 6 months, and then they come back again in the spring, or vice versa, or they may have a second home elsewhere, but they want to be able to manage their financial products. Comes to ease of use. And I think once you can prove that, and working with your startup community, not because I run a startup community, but the startup community is one of the greatest assets that any startup or small business may have. The services that they offer are, most of them are free actually. And these communities bring investors, they bring pitch nights, they bring an opportunity for to meet investors, to meet other people in the game or other industry leaders, where you have the opportunity to speak to them and to say, well, you know, this is something that I'm working on. It gives you an opportunity to get free advice as well too. So some of the key things you really need to look at is putting yourself out there, but getting a mentor, getting someone that can help you navigate some of these key points. You know, Eduardo was saying about legal. That's another thing too, because I mean, your lawyer or whoever is in your camp, they only will go to so far. You need to make sure that you're surrounded with the right people that's going to get you across the finish line. So it all comes back down to creating that partnership with your surrounding other peers. I know it's a little long-winded, but I just wanted to really get that out there to make sure, because that's the biggest complaint I hear from everyone is I'm trying to get funding, you know?
That's totally cool, and I believe, you know, what you said is actually right. You know, there are so many other problems around this, and it's as well, you know, related, for example, with things about cybersecurity and to accessing, you know, in a secure way to those applications or to those solutions that sometimes people don't understand, you know, or people when are actually building this thing, you know, everybody can access to this. There are seniors, there are older people that are using it as well, and they sometimes don't know how to use it, so it's not as you know, as good as you probably believe that is. So there are many considerations there, so thank you for highlight those. And the last question will be regarding, you know, how we can connect those two startups ecosystems, like the fintech startup ecosystem and the Latin American startup ecosystem. So what do you think after you have heard each other, what is going to be the main point to connect us, you know? So we're going to start with Mel, then Rebeca, and then Eduardo. Mel, you go first.
Okay. Yeah, as I was saying earlier, it's the collaboration. And, you know, we saw that firsthand when we were in Mexico. There's the developments in Mexico and the developments here in Canada. I'm really seeing that alliance for the Pacific Alliance, that whole collaboration piece, creating something that we've already identified gaps singularly, but as a combination and to work together, I think, you know, we can innovate and create even greater than what we have right now. It's just really, how do we develop that strong ecosystem and that partnership? That's what we really need to look at and to address, is to see how can we do that. I think, you know, government, there's so many programs that's out there, but there's also a lot of private individuals that work within the industry that want to see this growth. They want to see that because it's a huge market, and the funding and the money that's there, it's incredible. So it's something that we need to look at.
Awesome. So Rebecca, do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, there's not much I could add about that. I just should say that collaboration could go through different and a lot of levels. I think not only in designing products. I mean, both countries and many other countries in Latin America have different markets with different desires. So we can access to or we can provide different products, but the collaboration could go through different levels, and that could be designing the product, getting the people and the access to the people to provide that product, communicate that product, but also in technology advantages and all many different views of what the company could need and collaborate with another company. And also through regulation and through governments. I think making making this industry stronger, robust, transparent. Some are things that the different countries could collaborate as well, not only through partnership of industries, but also partnership in government collaborations, and to make the whole industry more strong.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca. And now, Eduardo, you have the last words. Regarding this, do you have any comments to say about how to connect these two ecosystems, Brazil, for example, with Canada and FinTech?
I think just to add to what's been said is that I think that since Canada has a more huge country in America, they probably have more experience offering some financial products and services to a wider audience. That experience could probably help a lot of Latin American startups learning curve. America, I think that due to all the difficulties most countries live with, able mainly to be more creative and developing solutions, and I think it could be a good exchange there. America and Canada would like in the future is a creation of the depository.
Okay, Eduardo, I think it's good enough, really, at this point. But we got kind of like the general idea. Thank you for that. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today in this webinar. And sorry about the first, troubles with the connection and everything. But I think you guys have an idea right now. How is the FinTech sector from the perspective of people in Brazil, Mexico, and Canada, which are, main sectors in this specific booming sector that is FinTech. So we are going to open up for questions right now through contact at latamstartups.biz or through hashtag LatAmStartups. So if you have any questions, you should submit it right now. But in case you don't have any questions, so please just send us emails after. We can, probably pass the questions to our speakers, and as well, we can connect with you guys and, answer your questions through our email. So far, we don't have questions for now. I think we have a really, really shy audience today. So thank you, everybody. I think Eduardo just disconnected for a minute. But thank you, Melloney. Thank you, Rebecca. And thank you, Eduardo, if you are listening. There's Eduardo. So, finishing up right now. So, thank you to all of you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for the
Thank you, Miriam.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. And I hope everybody here that is watching this webinar join us in our next LatAm chat, which is going to be next Wednesday at 12 p.m. through Twitter. So you guys can join us there in a conversation with startups about FinTech, because FinTech is in the spotlight this month. Thank you to everybody, and have a great afternoon.